This is Open Line.
Well, good evening and welcome to Open Line. I'm Chuck Long, glad to be along with you for a very special evening ahead here on Open Line. Tonight it is Ask an Expert, one of our favorite shows here on Open Line. The expert is Kevin Kennedy, of course, with the Kennedy Law Firm. So your legal questions, you can ask those all throughout the coming hour. We just ask you when you have one of those questions or comments, give us a call. That number's on your screen throughout the show, 615-737-7587. And one of the best legal minds in the entire state of Tennessee, and I would say the U.S. We're talking about Kevin Kennedy. Let's welcome him. Kevin, it's always great to see you. How are you this evening?
It is so good to see you, Chuck, and it's just a matter of time now till we'll be back live. You know, the Zoom's been something else, but I really miss being there, and it's always a pleasure there in the studio with you. So I'm excited tonight. You know, I just came off a big win. We did a big jury trial this week, and it was a criminal case, felonies, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Say praise the Lord. And so we set the captive free.
And that actually,
so I'm glad to be with you.
We're so excited, and that just transpired just a couple of hours ago. So you are literally coming from the case and the verdict in your favor right here to the show. One more reason, Kevin, you know, we often talk about when we have you on the show, of course, it's one of our viewer favorites anytime you're here, is the fact, though, that you've been in the business, of course, your law firm, over 35 years, but it's your expertise. It's that broad range of knowledge. And, you know, I see when you get that verdict that you want, it never gets old.
It doesn't. And Chuck, there is nothing that can describe the feeling when you're under so much pressure, knowing you got your whole life, your career, your family, your future on the line. I'm talking pressure enormous. I have my assistant scoot over here one second. I want the viewing audience to see Sarah.
Hello.
Sarah is with me all the time. Okay, Sarah, tell them how good was the jury trial?
The jury trial was great. They put the team together and they did a fantastic job.
You put that team together. You heard me talk about it. And Sarah gets to see all this. And when it was all said and done, there's nothing but shouting going on at the Kennedy Law Firm.
Well, I can only imagine.
We're proud to do it.
And, you know, Kevin, the other thing that's so nice,
what we need.
People, when they're calling in, too, there's no question that they can't ask because, again, you have such a large staff of folks who have such great knowledge in so many different areas. So that's, you know, again, I know you've trained them well. That's one of the big benefits when people call in. And also when they call in, a lot of people may have that same question or a related question, and it helps them out as well.
Well, the truth is, you and I, we try to create a positive environment. If people come in and say, I can't win, I'm already beat, get away, Chuck. We've got some answers. There's some solutions. Don't ever think that there is no hope, because we are people that give hope and then can deliver on that so much of the time. You can't always win every case, but the odds are in our favor when we put the team together, talented, work hard, prepare. The other side's going to have a hard way to go against the Kennedy Law Firm.
Absolutely. And, you know, Kevin, you know, one of the other things it's really nice, I mean, in the environment we've been in for the past, you know, year plus with the pandemic, and we're starting to see these signs of hope and signs of returning to, you know, some semblance of normalcy. What would you say, though, have been the kind of cases, have you seen more of one particular kind of case in the recent years than others?
What we are seeing, Chuck, is this anger, this issue that I'm ready to jump on my neighbor. The domestic assaults, are you ready, are off the charts. Number two, the police are very, very jumpy. All the police now have a video camera and an audio camera. I'll ask the clients, I say, okay, well, where did they put you? They said they put me in front of the car. And so they're taping you both ways. And so some of the things that you see is the orders of protection. That's where you get into it with your neighbor and they run down and get a criminal warrant, get an order of protection against you. And, you know, in Montgomery County, they usually have a rule that if you get into it, the first one that gets the warrant, the other side can't get a warrant. You can't get cross warrants. So you say, well, I don't want any trouble with them. Well, guess what? They are going to get trouble with you. And when you get behind the eight ball, you say, well, I should take one against them. Well, they won't let you do that. So that's why this show is so important. The vast majority of the public are honest, hardworking, tax-paying people. and we all have rights. But if you know somebody's a little crazy, the Kevin Kennedy advice, get away from them. If somebody gets into an argument with you on the road, get away. It's road rage. If the police come in and say to Chuck Long, say, Chuck, get on the floor. Kevin, get on the floor. I don't know which one of us would be on the floor the fastest. We would probably, because we really want to try to avoid a misunderstanding. And, you know, I know more law than anybody, but when it's all said and done, we've got our lives to live. We've got families to protect. That's why I love the show. I can't wait to hear some of the questions tonight, because we've got some opportunities to empower. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. You know, Kevin, when we're doing the show, often I write down, you have so many great sayings that really apply not only to, you know, legal expertise, but life in general. So I'm constantly writing down a lot of the things that you say. You know, and Kevin, the other thing, people, they know the law, or if they're like me, they feel like they know the law. But when it comes right down to it, there's so many ins and outs that you do or don't know, you're not quite sure of. That's what this hour is for. So for our viewers right now watching, if you have one of those legal questions you've been wondering about, you've been asking your neighbors, you've been talking to your family, you're not quite sure which way to turn, this show is for you the entire hour. This is where you can ask those legal questions. Number's right there, 737-7587. And I mean, the questions, you know, that we get so many times is we see over and over and over on the news now. When someone is stopped, pulled over, or something happens, can you get that camera out and start videotaping it?
You know, Chuck, you kind of cut off just for a second. I wish I could answer that. I didn't get to hear the whole question, but one of the things I wanted to point out to you, you say you think you know the answer. Guess what? I have a whole law firm of lawyers, and they have different opinions. And then I'm in front of the judge, and sometimes I know when I make a point and there's an objection and they rule, well, okay, I've been doing it a long time. But, you know, I respect the judges. We have great judges, but even the judges make mistakes. In their good faith, they're honest mistakes. That's why we have the Court of Appeals. And a very articulate and skilled lawyer knows how to maneuver through those arguments and not bring any prejudice to their client. And so I look back over, they had this jury pool. One of my guys told me, he said, you can't pick a jury in Montgomery County without finding somebody that knows Kevin Kennedy. And if they know him, they like him. I've heard that over the years. Well, they went through the long list of lawyers, and they said, any of y'all know Kevin Kennedy? Wham, there goes all the hands. And they were so complimentary, and I'm very appreciative. So your reputation precedes you. Your life is an open book. So what you do every day, it really does matter. And so we want to be people of integrity, be people of our word. That's where it comes back to the law. We don't have to go to a lawsuit. If we can shake our hands and stand on and say, Chuck, I'll see you at 7. What does that mean? We'll be here at 7. I won't let you down. And so those principles uphold the law.
Absolutely. And Kevin, I was just looking through some of the questions that we had the last time that you were here. They involved, again, a wide range of topics, everything from personal injury, injured in a car wreck or the job, family law, bankruptcy, nursing home care, lost job, going up against the insurance company or the hospital. So many things I know people have a lot of questions about. So if you do have one of those questions and you're watching now, make sure you get on the line with us at 737-7587. Let's take our first caller of the evening. Chris is on the line with us. Chris, we're glad that you're watching this evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Kennedy, I do have a question. I have a...
You still with us, Chris?
I do. I have, so I own some property, and I have a gentleman, well, I won't say gentleman, but he has trespassed on my property with a gun, and he has actually been unarmed with a gun, and he has not been charged. And I've been asking for a police report for 11 months.
Well, you know, that is a very serious situation. I have one personally. You know, I own quite a bit of property. If you have a lot of property, you have a lot of problems. You got a lot of problems, you got a lot of neighbors. Somebody's going to get a neighbor that has a misunderstanding. And so what I'm telling you, don't ever confront any of the neighbors when they have a gun. You get away. The police, when you call them, should be there within a reasonable amount of time. What is that, 5 to 10 minutes? You must insist and try to talk to the police first. If you call the police and they were coming to the scene, go to the police first and say, this is what's going on. I was here putting up a fence. The neighbor got aggravated and he pulled a gun. You remember we said 1,000 times on this show over the last 9 years, the squeaky door gets the oil. You must advance your calls. Find out who the officer is, and you give that report so he can write it. And you might even ask him, do you have a report number, sir? So it pushes him. So then you get the report the next day. And if it is so egregious, you tell that officer, I want to swear out a warrant. I want you to swear out a warrant. Let's get this in bed. And if he goes up to the guy, in my situation, my people were putting up a fence, and the neighbor came and pulled a gun on them. So the police were called, and my people chose not to prosecute. Now, you can do that, but you could just as easily say, and he'll probably admit it, people who do that kind of stuff, they don't have the sophistication or the education that you have by listening to this show. It's brute force. That shows a lack of sophistication and a lack of education. One point to make out of you, you can get into with a neighbor, you cannot breach the peace. In the law school, they said good fences make good neighbors. And every time Kevin Kennedy bought a farm, I had it surveyed and I had it fenced. And that's created a whole lot of less problems for my organization and my people. And that's some good advice. People say, well, I don't want to spend the money. Well, when you get into a major lawsuit, you're going to spend the money. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said? A lean compromise is better than a fat lawsuit. So I always tell you to take the proactive approach. Let's get to the police. Let's tell our side. Let's protect ourselves. And I don't want them to get a criminal warrant against my organization. Thank you so much, Chris. I hope I can help you. But you can go back, do a follow-up, and then pursue it. You're still within your time frame.
All right, that's terrific. Chris, we're glad that you called. That's a scary situation. And once again, Kevin, awesome advice, and a lot of people can benefit from that. We're going to the phones again. Mike is on the line with us. Mike, we're glad that you're watching this evening. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Hey, yeah, good evening to both of you. I don't know if Kevin, I don't think he has an emphasis in law and constitutional issues, but I'm going to pose this question anyway. What is the difference between a mob and domestic terrorists? What's the difference between insurrection and an attempted coup?
I'm telling you, you ought to be a lawyer.
What we saw on January 6th were to be people who were Middle Eastern or people of other colors. Would they be calling them thugs and monsters? Would they be asking that nobody gets to sign out on a free bail? Would they hold everybody accountable, not just the ones who breached the House of Representatives and had the vice president running down the steps? I think if the world saw that somewhere else, even us, we would call that a coup, where somebody was trying to overthrow the government for a particular reason. And if you can give me the contrast between both, not only me, myself, I think a lot of people would really like to know the differences, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for the question. You ought to be a lawyer. I ought to put you on the Court of Appeals because you have correctly identified the legal issues, and let's use your term, constitutionally. Let's go to the real world. In my jury trial that we had, I had a very skilled lawyer, and he made a jury instruction. He said, I want my jury instruction based on the Tennessee law. Well, the district attorney, there was a lot of argument, and it got down to, how do you define, in your situation, insurrection? How do you define mob? And the judges can interpret that on what they believe. In our particular jury trial, the judge said, I will accept Webster's definition of the word that we were trying to define to go to the jury. The point I'm trying to make is every judge can interpret that differently. They can say, I don't think it rose to the level, or we think there's certain elements under the federal law that will define that. And of course, if you got two lawyers you got two opinions. If you got two lawyers, you got them fighting in argument. And quite frankly, that's why our judicial system is the best. Because if you hire a skilled lawyer, they know the correct maneuvering to show if your family member was charged because they just happen to be a bystander, that's not right. That's not fair. A good question to come back to, what would a reasonable person do under those circumstances? And so, quite frankly, the jury can say, I think that's a mob. I think that's an insurrection. And a very articulate lawyer can put on some of the greatest arguments. I am so impressed with legal minds. I used to sit in the court before I was a lawyer, and I listened to that guy, and he'd get up and he cut loose. I said, he's right. The next guy get up, he cut loose. I said, that guy's right. And then went back. So I said, man, that judge has got to be a genius because both of them were right. And in your analysis, thank you so much for the question, because you have posed it for all of us to understand. And you've also left it open for everyone to interpret. Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely, Mike. We do appreciate that call. Great point that you made and a great question. Kevin learned a lot just from that one alone. So, again, when you have those questions, those comments, make sure you get on the line with us. 737-7587 is the number to call. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, more with Kevin Kennedy right here on Open Line.